council meeting. Or before we get underway. Geez, Robert, what are you doing? Right. Now I can't hear myself, which is ideal. Right, I'll open with kia ora kia e te whānau o te kaunihera o te aoreri, whaia matauranga kia marama, kia whae taki kia whae mahi katoa, tū maia, tū kaha, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou e tātou katoa, tihei mauri ora. Apologies, do we have any? One for lateness from Deputy Mayor Bryant. Does someone wish to move the apologies? Move Councillor Mailing, seconded Councillor Dowling. Dowler, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Declarations of interest. None. Public forum, we have no one registered to speak in public forum. Right, the first report on the agenda is the committee structure for the 22-25 term. Elaine, I'll come over to you to introduce.
Yep, so the report shows the proposed structure. Paragraph 1.3 shows the minor changes to the delegations register. We've just included an excerpt from the delegations register at this stage because the full register is undergoing a review and will be presented for adoption in early 2023. Happy to take questions.
Apologies. Are there any questions that arise from the report? If not, is someone, Councillor Hill.
Through your chair, thank you for the report, very well laid out for us. At the regulatory meeting last, end of the triennium, there was talk of the change of the name of the regulatory committee to something like Environment and Environment.
Yep, so I think there was some correspondence over the last 24 hours, which said, given the agenda had been done, we couldn't do it at this meeting. But if there is a general agreement that that is something that we'd like to do, which I support, the report will come back to the
15th of December council meeting.
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to bring it up here and also to say that, you know, when you look at the standing committee names for people, you know, who don't know what we do and how we go about it and see operations, reg and strategy and policy, it doesn't reflect, those names don't reflect at all actually the significant amount of work that goes on in terms of obligation and responsibility around the environment. And I think it's a good idea if we make the change. So I just wanted to signal that here.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So something along the lines of Environment and Regulatory Committee or something along those lines. We can have a discussion between now and the 15th, but generally are people supportive of having that report brought back on the 15th? We'll take that as yes. Thank you, Councillor Hill. So is there a mover? Move Councillor Hill, second Councillor Maru. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you.
The Chair, I think you wanted to note the Joint Regional Transport Committee discussions.
Yes, so we have appointed on the basis, given the timing, of 4 members to the Regional Land Transport Committee. There's been a conversation, discussion / agreement that we will look to form a joint Regional Land Transport Committee with Nelson. At this stage, we're anticipating continuing with 4 members, but it'll be 4, obviously 4 from each council, so a total of 8. And that report will also be brought back to the a point between now and Christmas. Once we've worked through with Waka Kotahi, Nelson City Council. So again, something I think is worthwhile, definitely beneficial to both regions. We have attempted it in the past, and I think we attempted to do it during the last triennium. didn't quite work out, but I think it will be beneficial all round. So, any questions, Councillor Mailing?
Yeah, I'd support that. If you look at the Richmond transport plan that we did, we had Nelson City councillors come and watch that and take part. If you look at our connection, it's trying to get our goods from our hinterland all the way to the port. So it's our transport committee, it's not just about Tasman, it is about Tasman and Nelson. And the choke points are certainly in the inner city, getting through the same two roads that were there in 1963 when I arrived in this country, and Queen Street, where the set of lights are. So I think if we can work together, and then at least we've got 112,000 or 113,000 residents supporting our work with Waka Kotahi, but there is certainly some problems with funding that they've got. So we're still competing against the rest of the country, but I think jointly it just makes it better.
I think it's going to be a significant theme for the next 3 years, is whether it's transport planning, all of the above, working more closely in whatever form that takes. In this case, it's the Regional Land Transport Committee, but with Nelson City is going to be one of those key themes that comes through the next 3 years across a whole range of different areas. All right, thank you. So that's noted, and that report will come back, as I say, between now and Christmas for us to confirm that position. All right, it's been moved and seconded. If there's nothing further, did I put the resolution? Yeah. I did. That's been, thank you. Thank you for the prompt though, Elaine. Right, the next item is the appointment of chairs, deputy chairs. Oh, it's 2 items. Crikey. So, there's been conversations, obviously, to set up the committee structure, talking with people over, and it's a range of different things, different people, different reasons, time commitments, areas of interest, etc. So it's, as I've said to everyone in the conversations, it's impossible to provide everyone with everything that everyone would like to do. It's just the way things are. The vast majority of a councillor's workload is contained in the key committees of which we are all part, including full council. And I think, following up on my previous point, the joint council meetings over this term are likely to have some quite significant conversations around things like planning, regional transport, etc., given either our desire to work more closely or in some cases the legislative changes that have been made, particularly around the Natural Built Environment Act and Spatial Planning Act, which I think did I circulate the letter from David Parker, Robin, where they've confirmed that Nelson and Tasman will be combined. The exact timing, the practicalities and how all that might work, there's still a lot of water to go under that bridge, but to all intents and purposes, the decision's already been made as to how that's going to work. So I will leave it at that and open it up for any questions, comments, or if someone would like to move or second. Councillor Butler, Councillor Dowler.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm happy to move. I'm just thinking about the environment plan, and because at some point we'll need to start calling it the Nelson Tasman Environment Plan. It wouldn't be nice if we could call it the Tasman Nelson Environment Plan, because, you know, when we've got Nelson and Tasman combined and things, somehow the word Tasman seems to kind of drop off. So that's just a little thought for the future.
We may be even more of interest and call it something entirely different and not include Nelson Tasman in the title at all, which, you know, you just never know. But I suspect that kind of highlights one of the conversations, you know, before we even get to that. We're already talking about whether we call it and who goes in front. So there is, as I say, quite a bit of work to do to work through the practicalities and the timing, because it isn't simple. Nelson City Council's plan is halfway complete, on hold at the point of notification. Ours is, as we know, at an early stage of inception and at pre-consultation. How and you bring those together, what they wish to do with something they've already invested a significant amount in, and both time and money, obviously. and the fact that the future decision-making process is going to change significantly away from councils to independent so regional planning committees and independent hearing panels. So the entire process and the role of either council or both councils is going to change significantly through this process as well. So all we know at this stage is that we're going to be considered a combined region. We don't know a lot of the details. There's still a select committee process to go through into which we can choose to make submissions or otherwise. I've had a chat with Barry Johnson. Those obviously conversations with Nelson City Council staff, and hopefully we can come to some joint agreements over what we might like to submit on some of these things, but there may be areas where we have differing opinions. So we get to work through all of that process as well.
Look, I'm just thinking that I don't think that I can move this because number 3 is appointing myself to the community board. So
well, I'm pretty sure you can still move it.
All right.
Otherwise, no one can really move it, which would make it slightly awkward. I've got Elaine, and then Councillor Dowler.
Just wanted to point out that there are a few minor changes from the agenda report that we'll scroll through shortly, which are highlighted.
Councillor Dowler, then Councillor McKenzie and Councillor Hill.
I'll just have you a second.
Thank you, Councillor Dowler. Councillor McKenzie.
I thank you through the chair. I guess thinking about working more closely with Nelson, one of the things we had to work through in the last triennium, for example, we had the approval of the FDS, where actually it was made by the joint committee, and so you can have a majority decision. But then we had the decision on setting up the holding company, which actually then ended up being a decision by each council. So when we're thinking about the terms of references for the committees, it would be really good to think that through and make sure that, there might be very good reasons why you would do that, but equally, if we're going to be working more collaboratively together, it would be good to avoid those sorts of situations because you get a lot of re-litigation. Anyway, just making a point.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. So when we come to discussing terms of reference for items like the joint council and joint shareholders, those conversations will be, I suspect, looking to Lisa Wheeler, there are some things that you can't delegate to joint arrangements just because the legislation requires it to be made by a certain process, but I'm sure that can be considered as we go through. And I pick up there's a very significant willingness from Nelson City to work more closely on all of these areas as well. So hopefully that is a positive. Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. Councillor Hill.
You'd have to say that we do have more environment than them, surely.
Well, we have a larger environment.
Yeah, more.
It is going to be one of the fundamental conversations because we are going to be joined in these processes. Who pays? How much? All of these things are going to who resources, staff. As we know, we have a larger range of environmental challenges just because we have a very vast district with lots of rivers and lakes and water and biodiversity, which is different. So these conversations are not going to be straightforward. So getting to the point where this kind of, I guess, relatively high-level decision about I'll just work together and make one plan is actually a lot more complicated than it sounds at first kind of hearing.
Wasn't really the point I was raising my hand to speak to, but couldn't resist. In terms of, what's significant here in our resolution today is that we're agreeing to create iwi rep roles for the standing committees. This is a really significant time for Tasman District Council and the district. And I'm very pleased that we are. It's the right thing to do. This has been happening in other councils around the country for a long time in some cases. Our representation review cycle wasn't timed very well for us in terms of Māori, looking into Māori ward, and that didn't reflect well on us from some perspectives, I think. So, and that we didn't, we would have had to have brought our representation review forward to go down that road of whether there'd be a Māori ward or not, and that we didn't do that. It's been important to me, and I think for this council, to ask for us to make a move with our standing committee structures in terms of iwi mana whenua representation. So I didn't want this to go by without saying that. A lot of work has gone into in our relationship. So it's great to know, isn't it, that this isn't something we've cooked up, but that the mana whenua iwi are supportive of the approach we're taking in this case. So acknowledgements to those that have been at the heart of those conversations and the building of relationship over quite a few years now. I'll certainly be voting in support of the resolutions today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Are there any further comments? Councillor Bryant.
Just a question in relation to the Tasman Regional Transport Committee, in light of the discussion you and I had the other day. Oh, you've already covered that. All right. Jesus, you must have done a lot in that 5 minutes.
You know me, Stuart. Good here for a good time, not a long time. Right. Are there any further comments in relation to the committee structure? I'd just like to reiterate the point that was made by Councillor Hill. I think the crucially important thing in this whole conversation is there's always a perception that by improving relationships with one group of people, whoever that is, somehow it's at the detriment of relationships with anyone else. And in my view, that's like just completely the wrong way to look at it. So building relationships right across the board, for us, there is nothing more important right across the board. So whether that's with existing communities, new communities, how we do it, how we involve people in those conversations. And we discussed earlier on, as we've met over the last few weeks, just how important it is to continue to build those relationships and to look at it in a way that says everyone we can improve actually improves in many ways all of our relationships, because they're all interrelated. And the better we can work with all the different parts of our community, the better off we are collectively in terms of the decisions we arrive at. So I think for me, that's the most important thing. It's not a case of one versus the other. It's not a case of improving one at the detriment of the other. It's that every relationship we can improve makes us better collectively. So with that, if there's nothing further, I will... Oh, sorry, Elaine, a couple of minor changes.
Yep, so this is in addition to the agenda report, the Nelson Tasman Joint Cemetery Working Group, 2 members being appointed there.
Yeah, so we forgot this entire thing. Both the members that I consulted were dying to do this job, so... It wasn't based on age.
If we carry on scrolling through, yep, that has been decided that it's not required. Councillor Butler will be the chair of the Native Habitats Tasman. And there's a swap there that's been agreed, and another chair position for Councillor Butler. I think that might be it. Oh, a couple of changes to the agenda there.
So with those minor alterations, it's been moved and seconded. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. So the next item is the Remuneration Authority Governance Pool Distribution Report. Come over to you again, Elaine. Thank you.
Thank you. So this was a hopefully fairly comprehensive report. It's quite a complicated way of working things out. I probably start with what you're not here to decide today. You're not here to decide how the Remuneration Authority makes its determinations. You're not here to decide the Mayor's remuneration or the Community Board's remuneration, because you're not delegating any additional responsibilities to community boards. So you're not deciding that. What you are deciding is the remuneration, the governance remuneration pool is an amount awarded to the council, and the whole amount has to be distributed. You can't keep any back or whatever. And what you've got there is our proposal to lift the minimum allowance payable to a councillor, to lift that up, but then to also give an extra amount to the Deputy Mayor and the 3 standing committee chairs. And as you work through the report, it will show you how we've worked that out. Table 1 shows you in the first column the minimum remuneration of 39,936. We're proposing an additional allowance of 7,006, totaling 46,942 to all councillors. And then an additional allowance of 14,083 to the 3 standing committee chairs and the Deputy Mayor, totaling 61,025. And you can see there are 2 different dates that those amounts are backdated to. And this is all in legislation. Following today's decision, we will forward Council's proposal to the Remuneration Authority, along with all of the other councils in New Zealand. And the Remuneration Authority will consider our proposal. I can't see there's any reason why they wouldn't accept it. Then they will gazette this will be their 3rd determination, because there's already been 1 amendment determination. And then once it's been gazetted, we can then backdate the amounts that you've decided accordingly. So they'll either be backdated to the 14th of October or tomorrow, which is the day following your decision today. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, it is open for questions. If there are no questions, Councillor Hill.
I don't have a question, but I am happy to move.
Councillor Hill. Seconded Councillor Maru. Are there any further comments on the resolution?
It's always awkward when you're dividing up cash for people or salaries, but I think it reflects the workload. In some ways, last Friday I spent 5 hours in here. Wasn't a scheduled meeting. It was a WCO submissions, and our staff have put in huge hours in relation to that. But there's a lot more work that you put in when you've got extra jobs, and I'm sure it's the same for all councillors. We all do extra, and it depends which ward you're in. Some wards are more exacting than others, and some subjects are more exacting than others. But nobody comes here for the money. They come here because you want to serve your community, and I think that's the basis that I always like to work.
Thank you, Councillor Mailing. I think, again, we run a very simple model. There are councils around the country that have a very complicated model of trying to adjust, different roles and additional responsibilities. My experience is that there are so many different circumstances around the table, and as Councillor Mailing points out, a whole range of different abilities, time commitments, trying to balance whether it's family, other roles, all those things. It's very difficult to then determine who to pay a bit more or a bit less once you get outside those kind of core roles. And I guess the expectation is that when you're all being recompensed evenly, that the work that's undertaken is kind of shared evenly. And a lot of that's in the community. It's not related to the little job titles or the areas or the names that we get put on lists. It's just all the work that you do every day, every week, attending community meetings outside the kind of core council roles. And primarily that's where a huge amount of the time commitment in this role comes in. So my preference is to run a relatively simple model and then rely on everyone to fulfill the expectations of their community in terms of how you represent and the time commitment that you put in, acknowledging that everyone's got different circumstances and different abilities. And you can make a significant contribution by not being out every hour of every day and at everything. Equally, you can be out every hour every day and at everything and not necessarily make a significant contribution. So I think it reflects the kind of relatively flat structure that we run right across our organisation, and try and ensure that everyone's given the opportunity to contribute to the role that they've put their hand up and been elected to do. So with that, if there's no further comment, Councillor Hill, right of reply. Yes,
if I may. I appreciate that. It's been no good if we were having a little auction, a little bidding for the pool, would it? So it'd be a lot of fun. But so I'm appreciating that we've got people who are experienced in the area, who are objective, who are looking at other models and other councils, and that what we get presented with has had a lot of thought and work and rationale put into it. So I want to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Right, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the adoption of the Tasman District Council standing orders. Again, I guess Elaine and Leith, I'll hand over to you to introduce the report.
Okay, so you're being asked to adopt standing orders with some slight amendments, and there are optional clauses that you can make choices on. The standing orders were attached with track changes. Would just point out that the previous standing orders still apply until you adopt a new set or amend them. So there was a question the other day, what happens if standing orders aren't adopted? But the previous standing orders apply until new standing orders are adopted or standing orders are amended. Yeah, I'll take the report as read. And any questions?
Right, there's quite a bit in the standing orders document, but Councillor Murray.
Thank you, through the Mayor. I just have a question, Elaine, in terms of it'll be in terms of current standing orders option 4. So on page 249, the local government suggests option C in terms of more relaxed and more encourages more conversation around decisions at a committee level. I see we're still recommending option B though. Can you just talk to that a little bit, please?
So option B provides a level of formality that assists with decision making, but it still allows a level of coming to agreement, or it gives the chair the ability to run the meeting as they see fit. Option C is quite loose, so I wouldn't recommend it for council meetings. I mean, you could adopt different options for full council or standing committees or other committees, but option B is a common sense option. Option A is quite formal, which I've been used to at other councils, but I think everybody will agree that option B works quite well for us here at Tasman District Council.
Councillor Hook.
I don't have a question, no. I do. It might be helpful if when we move the resolution, if perhaps that can be moved and it's separate 4 or 5 parts, or some of them might link up, because a yes to one thing might not, I wouldn't be yes to everything or no to everything. So if we could go down that road, it would be helpful, I think.
So you'd like the resolution broken into components?
Yes.
Well, I don't think I'm moving anything yet. So if you wish to move anything or part of it, or that's at this point over to whoever might like to move, I'm certainly happy to take it in parts if that's people's preference.
Well, I'm happy to move part 1. Receiving
the report?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
no other part of it?
Well, I just think it gets tricky in terms of inviting a yes to each thing that's bundled together, or a no. And I feel if we go through, others mightn't agree, but if we look at each one separately, then people can choose.
Yep, I'm more than happy to take it separately.
I'll move 1 that we received the report.
Okay, that should be relatively straightforward. Is there a seconder for 1? Thank you, Councillor Greening. We'll put item 1. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Right, so that's the report received, so that's a good start. Councillor Greening, do you have a further comment?
Yeah. This is pretty straightforward, as it must have been in this report. I'm happy to move that 2, we agree the inclusion of members' ability to attend by video. I think it's worked really well, and we should be encouraging that, not only through councillors, but through the community and through staff. It is the future. In terms of 3, I'd like to move that the casting vote be retained, so that's adopting the use of the casting vote. I think that worked successfully last time.
Just to clarify, we didn't have a casting vote last time.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, sorry.
So the motion is...
declines to adopt the use.
Yes, declines to adopt the use.
Okay.
So I'd like to maintain that position, and I think we've already canvassed B and C. Again, it's just basically just endorsing the status quo from the previous term. Does anyone have an objection? Yes, I'm really
Councillor Walker. All right. That's right. It's open for comments or questions. I've got Councillor Bryant, Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question's to Elaine, just in relation to that chairperson's cast and vote. Did we have it previously that for a statutory decision where a decision, and I think that's what we're trying to do here, isn't it?
It was recommended last time, but you still declined to do it. But we should remember that if a statutory decision is lost, our standing orders allow a further motion to be put on the table to progress the matter. So if a statutory decision was lost, there are still ways forward for us to progress.
Right.
That.
So what was the thinking behind perhaps having it in there?
That happened at the review of the last LGNZ model standing orders, and it was just a suggestion. I remember during the review that it was suggested, because some councils have taken the provision for a further motion to be moved when a motion is lost out of their standing orders. And so they would not have a way forward to direct staff if a decision was lost. So it made sense to just add that option for a statutory decision. But we'll be fine because our standing orders do allow us to progress matters that are lost.
So they would just have to do that on the day if there was.
We would just do that. We would follow the process on the day until we came to an agreed way forward.
Can you provide an example of a statutory decision that may trigger the requirement?
Adopting your LTP by the 30th of June.
Well, you've got a statutory deadline and you really do need to get it done by.
Okay, so good example. Consequences rather nasty. And look, I would expect that the council understands the importance of statutory decisions, particularly the consequences of something like that. And if we got to the point of needing to pass it by a casting vote, we've done something horribly wrong in the run-up to that sort of decision. So,
that's all for now. There was something else, but I'll see if I can find it.
That's right. Councillor Bryant, Councillor McKenzie.
Yeah, I'd just like to reflect on the last 3 years and that we didn't actually strike that problem. So I don't think that we're likely to in the next 3 years. So yeah, I support that we decline to adopt the use of the casting vote. Status quo from last term.
Thank you. Councillor Mayling.
Right, so what I'd like to talk to is about Appendix 9 and workshops. And I think one of the things that we've had from the public is they would like our workshops more in public. So that's one point that I'd like to make, that we do that. And I know the CEO has indicated that that will be happening more in the future. And 2, that we record who attends, because there's a lot of work done in workshops, whether it be TEP or long-term plans, and there is a set of rules in relation to confidentiality that we have to follow. So at times under the Local Government Act, they will have to be closed, but at other times, when everything that I've read says you're best doing as much of your work in public view as possible, because then you demonstrate you're not hiding anything. So I'd just like to make sure that what we've got in that appendix allows us to do that. So that's a question for you, Elaine.
So if I could clarify the plan for workshops going forward, there will be a regular information report to council that will list all of the workshops that have taken place. That will list the open and confidential workshops, and it will attach all of the material related to the open workshops as an attachment. If elected members would like, we could include the attendees for those workshops on that information report, if that would be valuable. We don't intend to open the workshops to the public, but we're going to list them and make the information available that was provided to you, as long as it's not confidential.
Okay, thank you. Jenna.
I think I'm just hearing a little bit more in the question and just looking at the standing orders. However, if the council wish to change their mind or give direction that a workshop should be open, the standing orders enable it. At the bottom there, you can see they can be either open to the public or public excluded. So the standing orders won't prevent you moving forward.
Yeah. And there's a continuum of open to the public. Some people, we've had workshops where we've invited people in, for example, youth council, there's been a range of things. So there's a continuum which you probably can't cover entirely, as long as the option remains open to have them either open or closed, information provided, etc., then we can work through that as we go. So again, it was a question that came up significantly in the elections. It was a key plank of just about everyone who was standing alternatively for the mayor. I basically, every time I was asked at every meeting, said I think there is a place for workshops where there aren't public, so that we can have those conversations. Equally, I think Elaine's outlined that the officer of the auditor has made it quite clear that you should try and ensure that as much as possible the information is provided and people are aware of what's been discussed and information. So it's trying to strike that balance between the two things, and I think the way it is currently written enables us to do that.
I just want to make one comment through the chair. We'll also be providing the notes from those meetings. We can provide sort of what the subject matter is. I mean, that allows us to do that as well. The standing orders do. We don't necessarily, we can make that decision, but yeah, which could include attendance. But the material will be providing. As I say, we may well include some of the notes, but they wouldn't be like 4 minutes you do for a council meeting.
Right. Anything further? Councillor Green, so that's not specifically part of the resolution, although it is contained within the documents that are being approved should the resolution be passed. So
I've got a question related to that as well.
Closing comment? Or...
No, I'll come back to you. So you move the resolution so you get a right of reply.
My question is for you, just in relation to the minutes. Right now, not needed to be signed by the chairperson, authenticated and stored electronically. We'll still expect the chair to look over them before they're sent out, though, won't we?
Absolutely, absolutely. The intention was to remove the electronic signature because it provides complications with putting the electronic signature on the website for confirmed minutes, etc. So you will most definitely, as chair, be reviewing the minutes for your approval.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any further? Do you have a question?
Yeah, well, a statement, and I'll just close.
I'll just, but if you're going to use it as your right of reply, I'll just check there's no one else to speak first. Councillor Hill.
Through you, Chair. I'll support the resolution of 2 and 3. I think two things I think about the casting vote. One is that perception in the community and understanding in our communities, some of them, was that the casting vote was used during the dam process at times, and so there's a resistance to the notion of things being put through with casting vote. So I've been asked to by some people to support there not being a casting vote just based on that, really. So, and that's noted in the report, and I appreciate that was put in there, actually, the acknowledgement of that, how, that it's been used historically. And but mostly, I think that it's pretty poor governance, I think. I think we're not doing very well if we're going to rely on a casting vote for matters that relate to statutory obligations that we have. If we got to that point, we're not doing very well. And you know, those processes are long processes largely, and there's lots of signalling along the way about whether we're getting where we need to be. So I support there not being a casting vote. And just a note in terms of the standing orders around apologies, under 12.4. So when we put our apology in, we're seeking a leave of absence, and there's some point at which it says that, I just couldn't quite pick it up again here, I haven't learned to use my pen yet, that if you are 12.6, where you're absent from the council for 4 consecutive meetings without a leave of absence, then your office becomes vacant. Does that relate? So when you say, when it says council, does that relate to full council meetings or standing committee meetings, or do we go back to the definition of council? I'm not sure. Thank you.
Elaine.
At all the previous councils I've been at, that has been interpreted as council meetings. I think if you're going along the lines of declaring an extraordinary vacancy, you want to be on extremely strong ground, and our advice would be to interpret it as council meetings rather than standing committees.
Thank you for the advice.
So there is room for interpretation on that, or there isn't?
I think there's room for interpretation. Like many things, there's the safe interpretation, and then there's the slightly riskier interpretation. And it's a question of the advice is, if you want my understanding, Elaine, putting words in your mouth, is you want to be squeaky clean, 100% safe, and have no room for, you stick to the definition of council meeting. There is an interpretation that says you can do otherwise, but it probably carries a greater degree of risk.
Yeah, sort of, it reads quite open, doesn't it? Full council meetings, you're not there, don't give an apology, you're out.
Yeah, that's correct. But as I say, in my experience, I think every council I've worked at has interpreted that as council meetings, just to be on very solid ground.
I mean, the room for interpretation in our case would only come because our standing committees are the whole council, and lots of councils, the standing committees or committee structure is a portion of, in one way, shape or form, and hence the distinction is probably a lot clearer between a council meeting and a committee meeting. In our case, they're committee meetings, but they're effectively of the whole. So I still think the advice that Elaine's provided is probably the right one. Right. Anything? Oh, sorry, Councillor McKenzie.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. Just a question with regards to workshops. So we've had a bit of a discussion about it. If we are going to include attendance records in terms of workshops, does that need to be written into the standing orders?
No, I don't think so. If you give us direction to include that in the information report, we can absolutely do that.
My personal view, you're publishing that if you are publishing the information, then attendance just comes as a matter of information, isn't it? It's just part of the overall information. So it seems pretty straightforward to me, I would have thought. Okay, all good. Anything further before I come back to Councillor Greening's right of reply?
A question for you to perhaps too, Councillor Greening. So for number 4, which of those options was you going to select? B. 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 Thank you.
The resolution has been moved and seconded by.
Put on the screen because there's people who
are. Oh, sorry. In terms of yeah, okay. So the resolution with the options as moved by.
Because otherwise,
Council, yeah,
can't see them.
Good point. Yeah, he's moved. Councillor Greening's moved 2, 3, 4, and I presume 5, or even though it was on the other
I can do
page
5.
over.
I thought someone might another opportunity, but yeah, I can do 5. Yeah. Just trying to move things along.
Yeah, look, if you're happy to include 5 on it, is there a... Okay. Does that accurately reflect what moving?
Option B, recent casting rate, recent yep, sweet.
All right, all good. Anything further questions or comments before I come back to Councillor Greening for his right of reply? If not, Councillor Greening.
So first of all, thank you, Councillor Walker, for singing me. Certainly endorse the comments about workshops. I think they should be public, and I think the community would also probably want a bit more detail around what's happening other than just topics. So probably minutes, if we're going to go public on them, should be provided. Attendance, we already do that anyway, so I'm not really fussed about that, but we do that implicitly. What I would be interested in, if we're going to provide directions for these types of meetings, is also voting, which we apparently don't record, which I thought was really critical. So where division votes are called, it'd be good to have a register of decisions so that we can pull upon that document at the conclusion of the term so voters can see where people are voting. I asked this in last term, and I was told that all this information is publicly available, and so it wasn't going to be pulled together. But if we're going to pull attendance together, let's pull voting together.
So just to clarify, you're in your right of reply, so you've got to kind of stick to what you're
replying to the comments that were made around the table.
So, but you can't bring in new items.
I'm responding to the workshop.
So the voting conversation really hasn't been had. So just so you're clear, right of reply is to.
So I just make those observations. Thank you for supporting this resolution. Thank you. Cheers.
Righto, thank you. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? The resolution is carried. Thank you. Right, elected members, pecuniary interest register and appointment of the registrar. Leith.
Through you, Chair. As we touched briefly on the last meeting, there has been an amendment to the Local Government Act to insert new pecuniary obligations for elected members. The purpose of the report in front of you today is to inform you of those obligations and elect a registrar. The staff recommendation is that the registrar is the Legal and Democracy Services Manager, and at the moment that is me acting in that role. Happy to take the report as read, and I'm available to answer questions on the report.
Thank you, Leith. Are there any questions? If Councillor Greening.
Yeah, it's actually related to the other declaration document just after that one, which is the council declaration document. So there's 2 declarations in there. Let me just bring it up. Page 339, I think that's what it was.
I see what you mean. The draft form that we've attached includes both the questions required to be answered under the change to the Local Government Act, and also the Local Government Elected Officials Interests Act.
Yeah. So really good that you've cited the provisions next to the question. That's really useful. But can the provisions from the Local Government Act also be cited next to some of those questions? Because I'm not sure some of those questions are actually statutorily required.
Through the Chair, I'm happy to take that away and look at the form further.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greening. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. How often does this register get updated?
Through the Chair, you are required to do an annual declaration for the pecuniary interests under the changes to the Local Government Act. In terms of your regular update of interests, you are required to, or you are encouraged to let the council know when that changes. And that change can be emailed to the Democracy email address and updated on our register.
So if I may, it's up to us as elected members to remember to do that. It doesn't come as an agenda item during the triennium as a reminder.
through the chair, we, as staff, we don't have a responsibility to remind you, but we will be reminding you. We will make sure that you all fulfil your obligations so that you don't get fined, etc., etc. So it's a new thing, and we'll be giving advice, and we'll be giving you reminders, and we'll be checking so that we are to have a, and then from that register we pull a summary that we are required to put on our website. And for all of your summary information, we will come back to you and make sure that you're happy with the summary that we have taken from the register. So that's one of our obligations, is to put a summary on our website. But we will check with all of you, and we will remind you when your annual returns are due.
It'll be some time around now.
Yeah.
But I think it is useful to provide that reminder.
So Joe Blogs can go on the website and find out all that information.
So we're also bound by the Privacy Act. So your summary will not contain details that would contravene the Privacy Act, and you will be shown your summary to OK. So your summary will be vaguer than your register. It will only contain what it needs to contain, and you'll be asked to approve it.
Thank you.
If someone wants to find out, so obviously we publish or publicly notify on the website the vague summary. What's the status of the information in the report, though? So it's
vulnerable.
Exactly. So either which way, whether it's published or not, someone wants to see it and they ask us.
Although, if someone did request under Lagoima, we would consider what withholding grounds might apply in that case.
Okay. Councillor Greening, and then Councillor Hill.
It's a statutory requirement. It's passed by legislation. But I do want to raise some concerns with this process, because people will be able to Lagoima this and start building a parallel identity, and it will lead to identity theft.
And it's a lot of information. There is, Councillor Greening's point, there is a lot of quite personal information being requested. And I get the point of transparency, but it's quite comprehensive, isn't it? Certainly more than we've been required to do before as part of our interest declaration or interest register. So,
just in terms of the second report, which I alluded to earlier, there's also a great deal of overlap between as well. So again, removing the administrative burden would also be appreciated.
We acknowledge that there is a great deal of overlap between the two parts, and the changes to the Local Government Act make it really clear that both parts do apply. So we have to ask both questions, unfortunately.
And where there's an overlap between certain questions, you've already got it through the declaration. Why do you need another one? It's been provided to you.
Again, the Local Government Act is quite clear that the obligations apply.
And that there is an overlap.
And that there is an overlap.
Yeah,
so we acknowledge that there is.
Right, so when we provide, for instance, information about a location waiver, which you also require, or an interest in a particular activity, and we provide it under that Act, you can't then use that declaration to file it under your own register for the other Act?
Our form pertains to both the LGA and to LAMIA, and we're asking appointed members to fill in section 2 of the form, which applies to LAMIA. LAMIA also applies to your non-pecuniary interests and the interests of your close family members. So we've actually thought long and hard of the easiest way that we can make it to combine all of your obligations, all of our obligations into one form, and for us to be able to fulfill all of our obligations.
Cool. I'll talk this offline.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hill and Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you for the report, and I just so appreciate how well the report's laid out and articulated and makes things very clear to us. I'll be more than happy to fill out any forms I need to meet my obligations and let people know about me. It's not very interesting, but you know, it doesn't feel burdensome to me. It just feels like a responsibility and obligation that I should have. I'm happy to move the resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. It's been moved. Is there a seconder? I've got a number of other speakers as well. Councillor McKenzie.
Yeah, happy to second. Through the chair. So you might have told us this. Are you going to email us this form? So yeah, okay, cool. Because I was trying to work that out.
Yes, the form will come out in an email with, yeah.
Councillor Ryan.
Yeah, so just to follow on from Councillor McKenzie, and will you regularly email it to us at the time of updates required?
When you are required to do the next annual return, we will absolutely be working with the elected members to make sure you're aware of your obligations, and we will resend the link for you at that time. In terms of your ongoing obligations, the obligations are on you to email us.
Right. Yeah. So that there's a once yearly review and something changes in between, it's our responsibility to let you know.
Absolutely.
Sounds fair enough. Just remind us, please.
All good. Right. Anything further? If not, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. And the last item on the agenda is in the name. Well, why would I take a morning tea break when we only got one item on the agenda? It's literally not even 10:30 yet. And I'm not anticipating this taking hours. Right, so this report's in Anna Garrity's name. Anna, over to you in terms of the appointment of the hearing panel to consider submissions relating to Best Island Recreation Reserve.
Tēnā koe koro matua, tēnā koutou councillors. So yes, this report, we'll take it as read, and I'll quickly talk about the hearing process, but I will then pass on to Joe, who is the project manager, to just give especially the new councillors a little bit of background, because it's quite a complex and 30-year project, and this is just a small part of it. The point we've got up to, so in June, a decision was made to legalise the road, and as part of that, the road that people use now runs through Best Island Recreation Reserve, and we're proposing that the road be relocated to the edge of the reserve, taken under the Public Works Act and declared as road. It isolates a small little rectangle of 175 square metres, which we're proposing be revoked and sold to the adjoining landowner, who is also the person we're buying the road land off. And then at the same time, classify the remaining part of the reserve as recreation reserve, which is another process we need to do under the Reserves Act. But I'll now hand over to Joe to just explain the background a bit further, and then we'll take questions.
Thanks, Anna. Welcome, Joe. Over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, to summarise the scenario, essentially 30 landowners have historically been using single landowners' property without any formal agreement to get to their properties. These landowners on Best Island couldn't come to an agreement without council involvement. So, as Anna said, during this year, the previous council resolved to purchase this land to provide these 30 landowners with vehicle access to their boundaries. And it's been quite a process of negotiation with the central landowner and the remaining residents on Best Island. So we've made some good progress to date, and that's essentially triggered this requirement for consultation. So.
Okay, thanks, Joe. I'll tell you both happy to answer any questions that there may be around the process or the history, although we probably don't want to spend too much time on the history. Councillor Dowler.
Yeah, I'd actually like to move the recommendation and goes any further to may possibly appoint the 4 Richmond Ward councillors to the committee, maybe with Mr. Marling being the chair, seeing he's been involved quite all the way through.
Councillor Greening.
Look, I have to acknowledge that I tried to get this across the line way back when Lindsay McKenzie was our CEO. So there's possibly a perception of bias if I'm involved in this process, so I'll step down.
Okay, Councillor Mush, I think it's important Richmond councillors, should they be willing and interested in that they are involved, noting Councillor Greening's comments. So there is the potential for one more person I had potentially thought, given Councillor Mackenzie's role in both operations and history in a number of these processes, that she may be interested in being the fourth person.
If you need someone to do it, I'm happy to step in and do it if there's no one else available.
I sense the enthusiasm with which you put your hand up for this role. So it's almost as enthusiastic as the councillors on the cemetery committee. For some other reasons, possibly. Councillor Manning.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to do this. I've been involved with both sides, and I do know about the history. So it's important. It's been a torturous process, and Joe's done a very good job to manage some difficult people and some difficult meetings. But we also need to have an iwi representative as well. And I think that's very important, and I think it's listed in there because it is in the coastal marine environment, and the relationships out there have been particularly difficult, but we've made significant progress, and thanks to Richard and Joe in relation to that. This is probably the last hurdle, just about, and if we can get this over the line, it resolves something that goes back 30 years. And we did make a mistake in 2007, but that wasn't this council, it was this council, but none of the councils that were here, pretty much, other than maybe two. But three. But
the only mistake was made.
No. But yeah. But it has been a difficult process, but we're nearly there, and it will be great to get it all resolved.
Yeah, it certainly would be. Anna.
Oh, sorry, I just forgot to mention the hearing itself is scheduled for the 7th of February and then the deliberations on the 13th of February. So just if anyone knows they're going to be away in February, then they put their name forward just to think about that.
Pose an issue for anybody? Okay, thank you. Are there any further, so it's been moved and seconded? Move Councillor Dowler. Names have been popular. Is there a seconder? Second, Deputy Mayor Bryant. Is there any further questions or comments? If not, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thanks, Anna. Thanks, Joe. I think that draws us to the conclusion of the council meeting. Robin, before morning tea, you'll note. And lunch is scheduled for when? 12:15. So just think lack of faith in the chair, obviously, in terms of getting through this meeting in a reasonable amount of time. So I'm sure we will. All right.
Is there anything scheduled after this?
There is nothing scheduled after this.
Maybe we could get some IT people to come down for those that want to help with their
IT?
With their IT, like laptops, call it that.
Steve is furiously going to do that himself, or get someone who knows what they're talking about down in due course. So, Councillor Mackenzie.
Another suggestion might be if we had, if you could email us our pecuniary interest form, and then we could fill it out with you here in case we had any questions.
Leith, is that possible? That, people wish to fill in the next until lunchtime. Councillor Greening. Who? Yes, Councillor Hill, would you mind closing with Karakia?
Karakia tātou, a tawhiri mai ngā hua o te tai ao mai a papatonu ki tā kota nai ki ranginui tū. I hona I tūturu whakamau ki a Tina, hui e, tai ki e.
Right, thank you very much. Grab a cup of tea and...
Just before you all go,
rather than me annoy you when I had to send an email yesterday asking who's attending the hui on whatever day it is next week, Wednesday, when you accept a meeting, in the drop-down box there is send the response now. If you send the response, it means it gets tracked. If you don't send the response, it doesn't get tracked. And so that's why I couldn't find who had accepted and who had declined for that meeting. So, yeah. Oh, no, it doesn't come back to me.